one of the reasons you get World War II has to do with the Great Depression. And one of the reasons the Great Depression gets so bad is because this country doesn't want to act as the lender of last resort, which is what Britain had done in the past, but it couldn't after World War I. It had been bankrupted. And our country's irresponsible. These problems are on the other side of the sea, and we think, okay, America first and whatever, and we're going to raise tariffs and things, and all we do is tank the global system. Whereas if you're the lender of last resort, you're going to put money into the system as it's collapsing to prevent it from collapsing so that it can rebound. And yeah, it's expensive, but boy, a Great Depression's a lot more expensive. So they're different problems.
Is there a lender of last resort today?
Isn't that the problem?
Okay, it is August 1st, 7 a.m. For those of you who are actually listening, good for you. I love it when it's like in the Apocalypse Now movie. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Me personally here at Politics by Jake, I love everybody listening to me at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's the third decade of the 21st century. You don't have to do that, but I love it that you're here. Welcome, welcome, August 1st. Another month, 2025, Politics by Jake. And we, of course, do our bi-weekly thing on Monday and Friday. And you can go to kcaradio.com. You can listen to me either live, or you can listen to me on the podcast, or, the live stream. You can click the live stream and listen to me. I'm not live, but it's the live stream, so you can just listen to it that way. Or you can download the podcast. Just go to kcaradio.com, click on schedule, Mondays and Fridays. You'll see I'm there at 7 a.m. I'm right next to Stephanie Miller. I look great, I may say. And that's me. And just download the show or listen to the live stream. You can also access my videos and my reels and my shorts on facebook.com/politics by Jake, or facebook.com Lawrence Jacobson, because that's who I am. And you can also access me on youtube.com/@politics by Jake. I'm on the various social media. You can look for me there. One of my handles is @JakeIsOnTheAir. So you can do that. And you'll notice that I put, this is Sarah Payne, and she's a historian. That was the clip that I played you at the beginning. And she talked about how America made the Great Depression worse. And you've heard me talk about this, and it's really kind of interesting. And I've talked about it before. I've got other things to talk about on the show today, so I'm not going to talk about this a lot. But this is really the case. Winston Churchill wanted to be known as the Golden Chancellor of the Exchequer. So he reinstituted World War I. England had gone off the gold standard. But after that, it was reinstituted, and it was Winston Churchill that did it. And he did that. He said he wanted to be the Golden Chancellor. But in 1931, they couldn't do it anymore, exactly like what Sarah just said. And so they went off the gold standard. And one of the commentators at the time said, it's the end of the world. And for the financial system, it was, because there was no lender of last resort. All world trade. This is the thing that you guys don't understand. I appreciate it. I don't hold you to blame for it. We do political education here on Politics by Jake. But at the time, all world trade was done on a bill of credit that was backed by the pound sterling. When the British government went off the pound sterling, which means it went off gold. Actually, it went off silver too. It went off silver later. And the United States went off silver in, 1970 or something. It's about that time. Don't quote me on that, but it's about that time. This, completely destroyed everything. It completely destroyed everything. And the giant sucking sound that you could hear was all the hot money being sucked out of the United States and going back to England. It's true. That's what happened. And that's when the Depression really became the Great Depression. And America is partly to blame. I've talked about that in other segments. I've got a lot to cover today, so I'm not going to go into it further, but I wanted to have you listen to that because we've got the the awful, horrible bastard of a bill, which has added $2 trillion. I've heard different amounts. I've heard $2 trillion to $6 trillion. $2 trillion would be far and away bad enough, but adds $2 trillion. It's supposed to, and this is like the great tax scam of 2017. It's another tax scam because the oligarchs got who they wanted in power. They've tied up the judicial branch, they've tied up the legislative branch, and they've tied up the executive branch. And they've got a flunky in there, and that's Donald Trump, who will do their bidding and do the things that they want him to do. And as soon as he's done, as soon as he's served his purpose, believe me, they will dump him. But that's what we've got. And the reason I put that in, one of the reasons from Sarah Payne, is because this is the bottom line. We would like to think that things in this country run more on constitutional principles. And actually, those principles are in place. But really what it's all about is money. Unfortunately, money makes the world go round. It's a shame. And we've got a situation where we had a debt that was something like 35 trillion. It's now 37 trillion. And a con job, a honk job, a grift job by oligarchy and the criminals who run Wall Street to take away Medicaid, to basically go after the poorest of the people. Medicare is still there, and some other things are still there. Social Security is still there. Believe me, they're going to go after that too. But this is all they're doing now, $880 billion over 10 years. So basically $88 billion a year. And that's going to cause a lot of suffering, and it's going to cause a lot of death. These people they're going to have blood on their hands as a result of this. There's going to be sickness, there's going to be death, and there's going to be misery because people won't be able to buy food. They won't be able to buy medicine because their means of doing it, which is Medicaid, have been taken away. They won't be able to keep their homes cold or hot in the winter because LIHEAP, which is a part of the social safety net, has been taken away. And here at Politics by Jake, we think this is an abomination. We're totally against it, and we are for doing everything we can to get enough Democrats into office, right-thinking Republicans too. I don't just limit this to Democrats. This is an all-hands-on-deck notice from Politics by Jake. We need everybody of a good political conscience to step up and stop this madness, because it is madness. So let's get started. And actually, we've already started, but I wanted to do a follow-up. And once again, I do repetition on this show. You'll hear certain themes occurring again and again. And one of them is the path, people who choose the path of what I call narcissistic symbiosis to displace the value of their own lives, which have been destroyed. Their own lives have been destroyed through one means or another, COVID, or any of a number of things, globalization, for example, who have often lost everything. And it is the idea that they latch on to someone who seems to rise above it all. They don't listen to Politics by Jake. They don't watch my videos, so they don't have it explained to them, and they don't know. Cheap plug, Politics by Jake. And they displace their own hopes and dreams onto this person. Now, listen to me. This is a real thing. That is the narcissistic symbiosis. That is how it occurs. That is how that happens. Now, with this in mind, there's a short clip that I played. I'm not going to play it again. It's from George Carlin, who I love. A lot of people love George. And someone is chastising him and mocking him for talking about secret combinations and conspiracies. And basically what he says is, and I'm not this way, because I think that there are secret combinations, and they're a combination of religious, political, and business influence. But he says, and this is also valid as well, that, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'll get the clip up another time, but people do not have to belong to a secret combination in the way that, I describe. And what did he say? He said they go to the same meetings, they go to dinner together, they take vacations, they go to retreats, they go to seminars together. This is like the bar. The bar is just a big club, and these people see each other all the time. And having been in the legal profession for a long time, I can tell you that it creates a problem as far as the delivery of legal services to rank and file members of society is concerned. But that's yet another topic. We're not going to discuss that today. But that's not a secret combination per se, because the bar is public. Everybody knows about the bar. They have public relations that they do. But what George said was exactly the way it is with lawyers. They go to the same meetings. They go to dinner together. They take vacations. They go to retreats. They go to seminars together. And they come to know one another. And they come together because they know that what they believe is what the other believes also. And what did he say? He said, this is all it takes. You don't have to have an initiation like the Skull and Bones, although obviously that definitely is a secret combination. But it is also the very thing I talked about. It's a fraternity. These guys know each other. They keep contact after their college days. They tend to be go-to guys, therefore, to talk to. Once they're in government, once they're in business, go-to guys to talk to. Catch up on old times. Have a beer with. Go see a ball game. Or just whatever. And this is what this is. And I do, as I said, it's one of the tenets, it's one of the premises of Politics by Jake that we believe in secret combinations. And I just described what they are. And I make no bones about this. There are secret organizations that you are initiated into. Masons, excellent example of this, only one. There are others, even many others, but this is how this can occur otherwise. And really, the way Carlin described it, this is all it takes, really. So you don't have to go crazy when Jake says, oh, conspiracies. And by the way, I make a distinction between a secret combination and conspiracy. I don't favor conspiracies like the infamous DC pizza parlor pedophile ring in the basement of the DC pizza parlor that, guess what, doesn't have a basement, and so on and so forth, which has had several iterations. Because it can also happen in just this way. And it can also happen for people who, as Marx has said, and this is the word he used, they precipitate. He said they have precipitated out of the middle class. They have, he said, become the lumpen, Lumpen, the lumpen. And in German, lumpen means rags, because they can't afford good clothing anymore. They have to wear hand-me-downs or clothing that is worn and threadbare, out of fashion, because they have become poor. They are the lumpen proletariat. Proletariat just means workers. The definition of proletariat is just the working class of people who do not own the means of production, like land, like factories, like capital, and therefore they must sell their labor to survive. These then are the wage laborers. They're often contrasted with the bourgeoisie. And the bourgeoisie is the capitalist class. And I know these words are weird. I get it. That's why we're talking about them now, so you can have some familiarity with them, and they can be defined in more English and American terms that we understand. They're contrasted with the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class. These are the people who own and control production. And lumpen, this refers to the underclass, people who are outside the regular working economy, often including the chronically unemployed, beggars, petty criminals, sex workers, hustlers, and those living on the margins without stable labor or political organization. At this point, let's take a break, and we will be back, and this is Politics by Jake.
And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting.
Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Let's be blunt, shall we? America is litigious. It's unstable, and it's financially weaponized. If your name is on everything you own, you're a sitting duck. At Twain Consulting, we help you vanish legally, ethically, and permanently. From land trusts to layered LLCs, we teach you how to restructure your assets so the predators can't see them and can't touch them. This isn't a loophole. It's a strategy that the wealthy have used for decades. Isn't it time you got the same protection? Call Twain Consulting at 805-380-5699 or visit us online. Protect what's yours before someone else claims it. And now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. Do you like what you hear right now? Support the real talk then. Go to patreon.com/politics by Jake right now. Every dollar helps fight the noise. All right, this is Politics by Jake, and we're back. And we were doing some definitions. We were talking about a bunch of things. We were talking about secret combinations. We were talking about the fact that secret combination can be an initiation thing. Or it can be a comparatively associative thing, like people who have the same interests. They go to the same church. They talk about the same things. They golf together. They go watch birds together. They hunt together. They just do whatever they do, and they think the same. And as George Carlin said, that's all it takes. And I agree, that's all it takes. We talked about the proletariat. We talked about the lumpen proletariat, what that is. And I know that I understand this. Your eyes glaze over when you talk about the lumpen proletariat. Your eyes just glaze over. And when I talk about something that's bourgeois, or when you hear somebody else besides me talk about something that's bourgeois, or you hear me talk about the bourgeoisie, your eyes glaze over. I get that. I'm trying to define these things for you, and I did that in the last segment. So welcome back, and here we go. Why is it important for me to describe this to you? I can imagine you sitting out there, some of you, and saying, my God, has Jake become a communist? No. Of course not. Jake has never been or recently become a communist. But if we go by what Marx says, we begin to see something. And this is what it is. Marx and Engels both saw the lumpen proletariat, which are the rags, the people had fallen out of the middle class. As, remember, proletariat, basically the working class. Lumpen are the people who have fallen out of the working class for any of a number of reasons that we've enumerated now, but also have enumerated on different shows, as potentially reactionary. And what this means is that they could be used by the ruling class, like oligarchs, like financial criminals. They could be used, and this always is what happens. They always wind up serving the ruling class and working against their own interests. So they could be used. Lenin called them, he was pejorative. He called them useful idiots. Stalin did also. He said the same thing. They're useful idiots because they could be used. Useful idiots like thugs, mercenaries, or mobs, and they could be used against the working class revolution because they lack class consciousness, which we're trying to provide here in Politics by Jake, or stable connection to labor. They were seen as easily bought off, and tell me that that's not still the case. Easily bought off or manipulated by a con man like Donald Trump. And like I said, Lenin had no respect for such individuals. He and Stalin both called them useful idiots because they knew the truth and believed that they could always be co-opted to do the dirty work for the bourgeoisie, who, as I said, are the people who control the means of production. And in the book, The 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, which is from 1852, he says, alongside, and this is quote, alongside decayed roues with dubious means of substance, dubious origin, along with ruined and adventurous offshoots of the bourgeoisie, were vagabonds, discharged soldiers, discharged jailbirds, escaped galley slaves, swindlers, mountebanks, lazzaroni, pickpockets, tricksters, gamblers, marqueros, brothel keepers, porters, literati, organ grinders, rag pickers. He really goes through it, doesn't he? Knife grinders, tinkerers, beggars. In short, the whole indefinite, disintegrated mass, thrown hither and thither, which the French term la bohème. And that's Karl Marx describing the lumpen proletariat. And in Marx's framework, the lumpen proletariat was dangerous, a reactionary class easily manipulated, as I said, by authoritarian regimes, too detached from productive labor to hold revolutionary potential. He saw them as tools for fascists and tyrants like Donald Trump and his ilk, the people who hold his coat, rather than allies in class struggle. So again, definition recap: proletariat, working class, those who sell their labor to survive, the industrial wage earner; lumpen proletariat, literally rag proletariat, the underclass, disconnected from regular labor, often surviving on crime, welfare, hustles, or handouts. They do not produce value under capitalism and are often excluded from traditional class consciousness movements. And there are other thinkers who have talked about this. Franz Fanon, The Wretched of the Earth in 1961, he reclaimed the lumpen proletariat as the potential vanguard of anti-colonial revolution, particularly in Algeria. He said, in the colonial countries, the lumpen proletariat constitutes one of the most spontaneously and radically revolutionary forces of a colonized people. And he also saw them as unburdened by reformist illusions and thus more radically disruptive. And then we have Hannah Arendt. And Arendt saw the lumpen elements as vulnerable to totalitarian seduction. The mass man without a place, without a purpose, who might rally behind fascism out of despair and out of nihilism. Do you see what I'm talking about? Is any of this clicking with what's going on today and what's happened today? The United States, the people in the United States have been reduced from the New Deal, many into these things which are described here. So, coming around again to the original observation, modern lumpen proletariat in politics, Trumpism and the manipulated underclass, many disaffected Americans, alienated from the labor force, addicted, incarcerated, undereducated, or precariously gig working, they resemble Marx's lumpen proletariat. They're often politically disengaged, economically unstable, and of course, thank God for Politics by Jake, because we can fix that part. Economically unstable, emotionally volatile, but they vote. Sometimes they vote. Trump, like Louis Bonaparte, tapped into their rage and resentment, not their class consciousness. Slogans like, drain the swamp, make America great again. They became emotional salves, not policy platforms. They were sucker things. They were for the suckers, the easily led, the credulous, the ones who would believe anything. They aren't the organized proletariat of Marx's vision. They're declassed. They're dislocated. They're digitally radicalized, easily mobilized by fear, by grievance, or spectacle, but not ideology. And Fanon's reading in the Global South and inner cities, her interpretation, or his interpretation, shows up in modern urban uprising from Paris to American inner city protests. The lumpen here are outside traditional political institutions. They are often dismissed by elites, yet when they erupt, they disrupt systems deeply. Neoliberal systems breed lumpenization, gig economy, mass incarceration, AI job loss, collapse of unions. All of these are contributing to a growing global lumpen class. These people are not only the unemployed, they're unemployable by current structures. They drift in survival economies, OnlyFans, Uber, scams, side hustles, handouts. These people don't dream of revolution, they dream of escaping into the spectacle. Crypto, fame, conspiracy, consumerism. Is any of this making sense to you? Are you seeing what's going on? Much of the modern liberal left treats the lumpen as either victims to be pitied or embarrassments to be ignored if they vote wrong. But Fanon might say they are raw, they are unshaped energy. If they're not organized towards liberation, they will be recruited towards destruction. And at this point, let's take another break, and this is Politics by Jake.
And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Twain Consulting. Hi, this is Jake with Twain Consulting. Imagine, if you will, having the power to disappear from the prying eyes of creditors, identity thieves, nosy strangers, all while protecting what you've worked so hard to build. That's what virtual invisibility offers. It's not magic. It's smart legal and business strategy to shield your assets and privacy so you can live free, confident, and in control. Most people think that asset protection is only for the ultra-wealthy, but it's for anyone who wants peace of mind and financial security, including you. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control now. Call me at 213-465-0639 or go to facebook.com/Twain Consulting to learn how virtual invisibility can protect you and your family, because when you're invisible to risk, you're unstoppable. Now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake. Do you like what you hear right now? Support the real talk then. Go to patreon.com/Politics by Jake right now. Every dollar helps fight the noise.
Okay, and this is Politics by Jake, and we are back. And we've been talking about, this is some political education, and the way you're hearing me talking about Marx and Engels and proletariat and bourgeoisie and, lumpen proletariat, and you might think that, I'm a communist. I'm not, but one of the things that I don't do is I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if there's a good message, and if there's a good definition that fits and scientifically adds up, also observationally adds up, I use it. And that's the basis of Politics by Jake, and it's completely legitimate. I make no apologies, but I am not a communist merely because I happen to mention some of these terms. Don't ever think that. So communism failed. It didn't work well at all. And I'm well aware of that, and don't even worry about that. So I've often said, and what we're talking about, well, you've heard me talk about the casino economy and how it breeds lumpenization. And I've often said we no longer live in a productive economy. And a productive economy is an economy where there's actual, tangible, material, physical production, and it's circled around things that you can eat, things that you can live in, things that you can drive, things like that. Education is an important part of a tangible physical economy. Mining is important. Agriculture is important. Tech is important increasingly. You have this situation where Trump is talking about bringing these jobs back, the 60,000 factories, and that were often piecemeal sold off to, honestly, governments that are enemies, making the distinction, as I do, between the governments and the people. governments that are our enemies based on something from the late 1940s called the Trilateral Commission and the three economic zones and the disparity that existed and how that had to change and blah, 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 blah. And that's the realization of it, and that's part of globalization, and that's basically what happened. Those jobs are not coming back. Trump talks about, and others of his ilk, talk about how those jobs are not coming back. Those aren't coming back. We're in the 21st century now. These are the jobs that he's talking about of the 20th century, like 19th century, like 18th century, like coal, for example. That's not coming back. If you want to be able to have an influence in the 21st century, you have to be investing in the industries that are going to rule the 21st century, not the 20th or the 19th or the 18th and so on and so forth. So, okay, but what we have now, increasingly, is we have what I call the casino economy. And it breeds lumpenization because the lumpen are people who have fallen out of the middle class. They, for one reason or another, financial problems, emotional, mental, or psychological problems, domestic, family-related problems. They've fallen out and they no longer can sell their labor for money. And so the economy that has grown up around that it's like a casino. Wealth is not built, but it's gambled for through like crypto. There's like $4 trillion in crypto out there, and it's just unbelievably volatile. It goes up and down all the time. Derivatives, there's a stunning amount. It's in an excess. And I realize that this is going to be amazing when you hear me say this. It's in excess of $700 trillion in derivatives. These things constitute bets on bets. These things aren't real, and they all demand cash, by the way. Influencer scams, stock buybacks, corporate stock buybacks, companies do that all the time. Jeff Bezos did that recently. It's done in order to preserve the price of the stock and keep it from going down. In this world, the average worker becomes irrelevant, and the discarded working class becomes this lumpen rags class that I'm telling you about. And they're not rising anymore. In 2015, the middle class, which is the hallmark of the New Deal in 1933, the hallmark of the New Deal was the rising middle class and the power of the middle class in society that ceased in 2015. As I said, they're not rising, they're not organizing, they're just playing the slots. They're hoping for a YouTube channel, a TikTok hustle, a Trump check. This is lumpen consciousness, and you see it all around you, which is why I'm talking about it, to make you aware of it. It's atomized, it's transactional, it's disillusioned, it's declassed, it's disoriented, it's digitally controlled. It's literally digital feudalism. People aren't just broke, they're stripped of institutional identity. No unions, no guilds, no stable job path, certainly no civic education. And let me get in a cheap plug for Politics by Jake. Traditional media has failed. It has appeased, it has fallen under the sway of Donald Trump and the maggots and the ilk who hold his coat and allow him to create a dictatorship out of the United States, who allow fascism into the United States government. And honestly, it is. That's what's happening. As I've talked about before, Masha Geffen, I've talked about her last show, actually. I talked about how she said that America has the strongest civil society in the world. And you've also heard me say that it is our institutions, and civil society is, definitely one of them. Our institutions are going to have to stop this. Our institutions are going to have to stand up and stop fascism, but you can't stop it if you don't know what it is. I was talking to a fan a new fan. It was great. I was just talking to her today, and she thought fascism started after the war. And I had to explain to her, as I'm actually going to do this in Monday's show, but I'll give you a little bit of it now. I had to explain to her that fascism is actually an American invention and occurred in, I would say the Ku Klux Klan is a really good example of a proto-fascist organization. And I'm talking about other things now, so I'm just going to touch on that in passing. You had the first fascist government in Europe, which was a reaction to the Bela Kun communist government in Hungary, and that was Admiral Horthy. That was a fascist dictatorship. And then I explained to her that you have, Mussolini in 1922, and you definitely do, and the way he took power, and this is instructive also. I've talked to you about that. We'll talk about that again. Then you have Hitler in 1923, big fan of Mussolini. And he starts with a violent putsch in Munich in 1923. So while he really didn't take over the German government until 1933 or 1934, he was doing it. So he starts in 1923. And, if you look into Wikipedia, you'll find there's like at least 30 different kinds of fascism. There's actually a fascism called clerical fascism. It's unbelievable. And the point to make is that this is a thing. And there is no civic education explaining to people, as we do here on Politics by Jake, cheap plug, Politics by Jake, Monday and Friday, 7 a.m., KCAA.com. There is no civic education about this. You are not taught this. This is why this young woman thought that fascism didn't really happen until after World War II. Because she doesn't know. Because nobody's telling her, nobody's telling you. That's what I'm doing here, Politics by Jake. But what remains when you don't have these things, when all of these things are dismantled, and it is oligarchy and the moneyed class that has dismantled them. And never make the mistake of saying, Jake is just a refugee from the Big Lebowski movie. The character talks about fascism several times. And never make the mistake that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I haven't studied this, and that I haven't looked at this up one side, down the other, diagonally, vertically, horizontally. Please. Will you please? Because it's just so important. So getting back to what I was saying, you have this, and what remains is a spectacle. When you remove all of these things that are the bulwarks of the middle class, that powerful middle class that defeated Germany, that defeated the Emperor Hirohito in Japan, that created the atomic bomb, that put a man on the moon, that gave us the most stable and profitable economy that arguably the world has ever seen. When all of that is removed, all that remains is spectacle. Bread and circuses, panem et circenses, that's the Latin term, bread and circuses. AI-generated contact, rage clicks. The algorithm becomes the shepherd of the lumpen, and fear becomes their prayer. And this is Politics by Jake, and we'll be back.
And now here's a word from one of our sponsors, Wayne Consulting. Hi, I'm Jake with Twain Consulting. And if you're a business owner, freelancer, or entrepreneur, protecting what you've worked so hard to build starts with solid agreement. Imagine having agreements that make misunderstandings disappear and costly disputes a thing of the past. Get It in Writing is the all-in-one legal form package designed just for people like you, savvy entrepreneurs who want clear, enforceable contracts, whether you're hiring trusted contractors, leasing space, or closing deals that move your business forward. Get It in Writing provides easy-to-use, professionally drafted forms that save you time, money, and stress. Right now, you can get full access for just $99. That's 80% off the regular $497 price. A limited time opportunity you don't want to miss. Picture the peace of mind you'll have, knowing that your business is fully protected so you can confidently focus on growth and success. Don't wait until the unexpected happens. Take control. Secure your business today with Get It in Writing. Call us now at 213-465-0639 or visit facebook.com/Twain Consulting to get started. Now let's get back to Jake and Politics by Jake. Hi, this is Jake with Politics by Jake to tell you you're not crazy. The system is rigged. Help us say it louder, won't you? Join us at patreon.com/Politics by Jake. And this is Politics by Jake, and we are back. So getting back to what we were talking about, and this is, this is part of what we're talking about. We've been talking about the lumpen proletariat, the people who can always be confused by the moneyed class and can always be motivated to work against their own financial interests. The moneyed class is plundering the United States Treasury, plundering. They paid millions and billions of dollars to Donald Trump's campaign in order to get him elected. Why do you think they did that? Because they have a sickness and all they care about is money, and they care about getting someone in power who can give them the money. And when you have Joe Biden, people say, and this is a canard, and a canard is that's a French word. It means a duck, but it means something that's phony. It means something that's not true. You have this thing that, Joe Biden couldn't be president. And that he had to be gotten rid of, and he was too old. And there was a whole media thing that happened as a result of this. And it was basically kind of a palace coup, and he was gotten out of the candidacy when he won all the primaries. He had a record with labor like nobody. They used to call him Lunch Bucket Joe because he actually walked a picket line. No other presidential candidate, no other president has ever, and that includes you, Barack Obama, no other president has ever walked a picket line on behalf of labor. And I don't want to get too distracted from what I'm talking about, but it was because this was what it was. We have big deficits, and I've told you we've got a deficit now, the big, beautiful bill. And I'm just the big, disgusting, awful abomination of a bill has added actually $2 trillion. It's supposed to save money. It's supposed to stop waste. It's created $2 trillion more of a deficit than we already have. And we have a deficit in this country of $37 trillion. Biden was well aware of the fact that we had a deficit that was really high and that these deficits had to be brought under control. And he had this great plan. And you could call it like the 25-28 plan. And what he wanted was he went to the rich and he said this to them several occasions. He said, you guys have gotten rich off America. That's great. God bless you. Why don't you pay your fair share? Let's do this. Let's have a 25% alternative minimum tax. Let's have a 28% top rate for income tax for corporations. And of course, in the 50s, and this is becoming more well known, I like to think it's because people have heard me talk about it, it's possible, that the top tax rate for corporations was 90%. And in the 50s, corporations did very well on 90%. So if you didn't want to pay the 28%, you could pay the alternative minimum of 25%. You could do that. And then a 28% tax on capital gains as they are valued when you own them, not when you sell them. So this would be a yearly tax. And this is how oligarchs, this is how they make a lot of their money. They make a lot of their money on capital gains. And so this is what he wanted. And I think the idea was is that in a decade,
It would have brought these deficits under control. And the whole idea behind this, it was simply this. You guys got rich. That's incredible. God bless you. Pay your fair share. And when the oligarchs heard this, well, they didn't like that at all. They didn't like that at all. They didn't want to pay their fair share. And that is why Biden's the only person who beat Trump. When they knew that Biden was going to be the candidate, they really became concerned. Biden's the only person who's ever beaten Trump. And they knew they had to get him out of there because they don't want to pay their fair share. They want to plunder the Treasury for their own economic benefit. They're okay with Trump and MAGA Mike Johnson of the House. They're okay with pushing through a bill that takes $880 billion over 10 years out of Medicare, hurting the poorest and most defenseless. And who are they? It's the lumpen. It's those people that we've been talking about, hurting the very people who are least able to defend themselves, who have been disenfranchised from the middle class because of the destruction and the machinations of evil men. And as I'll say it, evil men, because to take care of the least of you in society is perhaps the hallmark of a good nation. And it's not being done here. And there is going to be death and there is going to be suffering as a result of it. So, I mean, as I say, these are the lumpen souls. The algorithm becomes their shepherd. Fear becomes their prayer. They're unmoored. They're politicized only by adrenaline. MAGA is not proletariat. They're not proletarian. They're lumpen. Just like I explained, just like Stalin and Lenin callously referred to these people as useful idiots who could always be convinced to work against their own economic interests. And again, the rich, they're working for their economic interests. I don't know why the lumpen would work against them, but they're blinded. There's a veil they don't see. So MAGA, as I said, not proletarian. It's lumpen. It's not organized labor, but it's outsider fury. And that's what Trump does. He inspires anger. He inspires divisiveness. It's not vision, it's vengeance. It's not dialectic, but it's QAnon. And Trump, Trump didn't elevate them. He exploited their alienation. He offered belonging without responsibility. He offered power without structure. But he didn't offer them a ladder. He gave them a gun. And he said, go find the swamp. I know that many of the people in my audience are post-lumpen. There are people who have seen the lie. They've escaped the fog. And they want language for what they survived. And I'm saying to you, and God bless you that you watch the show and listen or watch. I'm on YouTube, so you could be watching. This is what you were trapped in. This is why it felt insane. This is why it was meant to feel insane, because it was never meant to work. It was the end result, the following indicator of the attitude of Trump and those who hold his coat to do the work of turning a democratic republic into a fascist dictatorship via the means of people he sees and disrespects as useful idiots. That's not just catharsis, though. It's repolitization. So, again, we're pretty sure that Jake is not a communist. That's me. I'm referring to myself in the third person. Definitely, he's not a maggot. Why is he spending time talking about these things? Again, talking about myself in the third person. The reason I spend time talking about these things is because, number one, the station manager wants me to do this. He absolutely, positively is supportive of me and the message that I give on this show Mondays and Fridays, 7 a.m. on kcaradio.com. One of the premises of the show is that we need an informed electorate. And by educating the electorate, and I've explained to you in the past, those of you who listen to the show already know this, how I myself, in my youth, was not educated in politics and voted for people based on the most ridiculous sensibilities. And these are not worthy sensibilities. We don't want, for an example, an electorate that votes, as I did, for a person because his wife is named Happy. And that's what I did in the 1968 New York gubernatorial reelection campaign of Nelson Rockefeller. We don't want an electorate that votes for Richard Nixon, who believed in an imperial presidency, who said when the president does it, it is no crime, simply because he appeared on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In and said, "Sock it to me." This is not the measure of a good man in government. And we don't want that. I, for myself, don't want that. I want an informed electorate. And in order to have an informed electorate, you have to know the different aspects of the governmental system. You have to know the aspects of politics. You have to know it. And that's one of the things that we do on the show. This is why you have to know history. You'll hear me say on the show, I am a student of history. And I also tell you why. I tell you why that I am a student of history, because history is, number one, at least as important as quantum physics. Because if you know where you've been politically and governmentally, for example, and as I said earlier in the show, I just talked to somebody about this today, who thinks that fascism started basically in 1946, after World War II. Fascism has been around for 100 years. Actually, if you're going to date it, it's really been around in the 19th century. The Ku Klux Klan could arguably be called a proto-fascist organization. The first fascist dictatorship, I say, and I'm open to people who want to argue this, is the Admiral Horthy government of Hungary in 1919, which was a reaction to a communist government of Bela Kun in the same country of Hungary. People, if they're more educated, they like to think that Mussolini was the first one. Strictly speaking, he was not the first one. But if you don't know history, you won't know any of that. You won't even know that fascism has been around that long. And there's proof of that. I just related it to you. 1946. That's what this one person told me. You won't even know that it's been around for 100 years. You won't even know that maybe prototypical fascist organizations actually existed, and I can prove this, and I will, not now, in the latter part of the 19th century, and you won't know what they were. And so when they come around again, and these things always do, you will think they are new, and you will not be able to reference the lessons of history that show you what the outcome of these pernicious political doctrines and their application on society actually wrought. And that what they did resulted in the death and misery, absolute human misery of possibly every kind that you can think of tens upon tens upon tens upon tens upon tens, and I could probably go on with the tens, of millions of people. And if you don't know that, and you allow those pernicious doctrines inside the body politic again, then amen. Amen to you and your quantum physics, because it will do you no good when you are oppressed by killer austerity, genocidal austerity, just like we have seen, $880 billion over 10 years, designed to target the poor, the elderly, the sick, the afflicted, the lumpen, those people who cannot defend themselves and who we ought to, as a body politic, have a care for. And so if something like that had raised its ugly head again, what would you want to do? Would you want to embrace it? If you knew what it was, I don't think you would. Or would you want to shun it if you knew what it was? Would you want to call it out? Opinions differ. But I think a lot of people, if they knew that that's what these political doctrines created, they would want to shun them. And they would want someone to call them out. Someone who knew. Someone like me. And that is me. And that's what I do. And this is Politics by Jake.
Are you tired of the noise and the spin? Do you want the real story behind the headlines? I'm Jake, and this is Politics by Jake, where I tell you what they won't. And now we're going even deeper, and I need your help to keep doing it. Join me on Patreon and support independent political analysis that doesn't pull punches. You'll get insider breakdowns, you'll get bonus clips, and first access to new content. So go to patreon.com/politics by Jake. That's patreon.com/politics by Jake. No filters, no fluff, just the truth. Let's do this together.